Hi everyone, thanks to the developers for the review copy. I'm Mark Walker, and as promised, we've got our review of The Outer Worlds on Nintendo Switch. Right, I have a real issue here. You've all seen my performance review, and you'll have seen other channels covering performance. I've now been playing the game for a ridiculous 35 hours over the last week, and it is fantastic. It's a great bloody game, but unfortunately it just looks terrible at times. This review will be for those who have the Nintendo Switch as their primary and essentially only platform. Stick on your giant moon helmet, slap the game into handheld mode, and blast off to another planet. Is it Mass Effect 2 or Andromeda? Let's find out. Without going into too much detail, you'll play as a stranger frozen in cryogenic sleep for far too long and finally defrosted by the crazed Doc Emmett Brown-style scientist who becomes a pivotal part of your adventure. With or without him, you'll be working to bring about a balance to these planetary colonies, ruled over as they are by an evil, corrupt and profit-driven enterprise and essentially a global company. Now, what makes any game with Obsidian's name attached, for me, are the secondary stories, and in particular those of your party.
In style, are we? I'll be sure to nab a cabin with a view.
Whom you can have up to 2 others with you at any time. They can be totally ignored for the most part, but they're where these titles grip me the most. To give you an example, the first planet you visit has numerous optional side missions, but also there's a lot of hidden areas to discover. And this is where you realise the extent of my compulsive tendencies. I spent 20 hours, it's ridiculous, on the first planet, in a game that can be completed in that time. Every scrap of information has been read on all the computers and every handwritten note and hidden area discovered. This has led me to at least 3 unique weapons and dozens of player-driven, unscripted moments. Now for story, there are times where the Obsidian Knights of the Old Republic style formula pops up to my delight. The way the characters often argue amongst themselves, and then that combined with who you decide to choose or take with you, they'll have different interactions with each other, and again with those you meet.
What better place to lay low if you wish to avoid the authorities?
It's really got me hoping that we get Knights of the Old Republic 2 port for the Nintendo Switch because, man, that's one of my favourite games of all time. It's difficult to articulate how these micro stories add so much to the experience, and while the visuals in other areas can be lacking, to say the least, the majority of the cutscenes and the dialogue looks good enough to remain mostly unhindered by the potato mode Switch port moments. If you're not a fan of first-person shooting, I can assure you that there is an approach to suit your style. After you've chosen one of the 4 difficulty modes, with story being super lenient if you're the aforementioned FPS non-fan, I am always and always have been Mr. Stealth when it comes to role-playing experiences. Heck, I even tried to crawl through the grass with Geralt of Rivia. That didn't work out, he took an arrow to the knee, but you get the point. I love being able to creep through the grass, which becomes semi-transparent to allow you to see your quarry. Enemies are highlighted when sneaking, which is nice. Your aim improves and the amount of noise you make is reduced. This is where melee weapons become my mid-game go-to. The extra sneak attack damage and lack of noise, meaning you could clear out an entire building without even being heard. Delightful. For those who prefer the more direct approach, The Outer Worlds has a vast array of weapons, each that can be customized with an array of weapon modifications and by tinkering a workbench to improve the base stats. Flipping on a scope and reducing muzzle drift can all be done. You can create long-range weapons to attempt those distant kills. Whether you're fighting marauders or alien beasts, you'll have to adapt quickly to each, but there's never a single solution. Now, other than stealthing around everywhere, I am without a doubt one of gaming's most elusive thieves. I don't know what it is, but with every character from Nova, my fighter thief in Baldur's Gate, all the way through to today, my character was created and designed to be the ultimate thief, putting points into areas that would facilitate this, allowing a character to go undetected and pick through any locks in seconds. As you progress in these areas, you gain more and more abilities, which create a gaming experience tailored around who you want to be as a player. Now, unlike something like Skyrim though, your skills don't level based on how many times you use them. It's all about putting points where you need them. Despite a stutter and hitchy experience in some larger areas, when I'm indoors, creeping from room to room, lifting a data key from a pocket, robbing a safe here and there, I'm a happy man. Then walking back out and selling these goods back to the owner I just took them from, I love it. If you're detected or discovered doing something you shouldn't, this is where you'll need some extra and other stats. Conversation is important, and the ability to intimidate, charm, lie, or bribe your way through quests is my next favourite area of the title, and you'll find a number of different ways to do just that. There's another mechanic which is amazing. It's called character flaws. You see, my guy had a bad tendency to fall from great heights quite often. He, like Icarus, flew too close to the sun many times and fell off a ledge. What I didn't expect was to be offered a permanent character flaw based on this. On the one hand, he would suffer an indefinite stat reduction in an applicable area, while on the other, he would gain an extra skill point, usually only reserved for when you level up. What a great idea. Later in the game, you'll be introduced to more factions. If you've played New Vegas, you'll know how these work to some degree. It's not quite as overt here, but your actions can eventually mean towns or peoples become hostile towards you. There are zones you aren't allowed in, such as the hospital, and through using a cloaking device that you gain after the initial planet, you can disguise yourself and your team to get inside, but the longer you're there, the more difficult it is to stay unnoticed. Eventually you'll have to leave or talk your way out. It was a cool addition and not one I expected to see, which has been the case for much of the game mechanics in place here. There are far more moments that felt distinctly like the game Deus Ex than I thought there would be, for example, with multiple routes or hidden vents and ducts for you to crawl through. I really enjoyed the combat on offer. The slowdown system, which can be accessed with a tap of a button, gives you enough time to not only look at the different stats of the enemies you're targeting, but also pick off those headshots, shoot limbs out so that you can cripple characters, and use the special abilities of your comrades, which are a very cool touch. The motley crew you'll piece together and the rust bucket ship, the aptly named Unreliable, become a major focus of the game. From there, you'll plan your next trip to the numerous planets, and it was nice that it opened up from the midpoint with missions spread over these different areas and the choice being left up to you, the player. They nailed the control setup, but it's undoubtedly hindered by the performance at times. Now, I mentioned in my performance review that the gyro aiming, which is fully tweakable to suit you, can struggle when the frame rate drops down, causing unwanted straying of the camera. In the end, I settled for setting this to only kick in when you're aiming down the sights, which tends to work quite well. Everything else is standard FPS, from clicking the stick to sprint and a toggle crouch button. Now, the takeaway I've got from my time having only played the Switch version of the game is that if you're in that boat, you'll have a lot of fun. But that comes with the caveat of what I'm going to talk about in the next section. Things like load times being a touch too long, and the stutter of some areas and blur hamper the enjoyment at times. Gameplay here is excellent, but certainly not quite as good as a lower load times beautiful PC version. It scores 16 out of 20. While the controls are great, I commend Virtuous for the effort of gyro options and X and Y axis customization, among other things. They'd score top marks had the performance not affected the controls as they do. For me though, I give controls 17 out of 20. The game does, despite appearances, target native resolution and a 30 FPS frame rate. What's interesting though is that unlike something like, say, The Witcher 3, this game does not scale well with something like overclocking your system, which I know not everyone can do, but it leans us towards the idea that it's something to do with memory bandwidth or perhaps even the core code of the game itself, which might explain why, regardless of platform, let's be honest, The Outer Worlds was never completely bug-free and had its stutters. Texture resolution and overall clarity is quite poor in any larger spaces. Level of detail, anisotropic filtering, and draw distance, they suffer greatly. Scenery pop-in will be noticeable and shadows will grow as you move, and when indoors this improves greatly, and there are times throughout the game you'll stop and think, wow, this actually looks pretty good, only to move to another large area where it becomes visual soup. I can, in all honesty, live with these factors for the most part. I would strongly recommend you play this one in handheld. It just seems to run more smoothly, and to me it looks better, which perhaps is to do with the size when everything's dropped down to that small screen. But as we know, direct Unreal Engine 4 ports do tend to suffer. The Switch really needs bespoke work to shine. It's like wearing your older brother's hand-me-down school uniform. You might get it on, but it doesn't look great. Every single year. Come on. The biggest single issue though for me are the terrible mid-action loading spinners that come very, very infrequently but totally rip the player from the action. Running and turning and then running in the other direction seem to be a pretty good way of getting these to show up, and Virtuous must fix them. I've had 5 such incidents in my 30 hours of playtime, so I don't want to overplay or overstate their impact, they're just jarring and annoying really. I mentioned briefly that character models, while not the best looking with some texture issues, they're well designed. Again, my pleasure was hindered by those textures though. Check out old Moonface, man. It was really nice to see the ability to adjust the on-screen text size. That's something we haven't seen in hardly any games on the Switch, and it's a most welcome addition. Audio is brilliant.
Fine. Here's every bit I've got. That enough for you, or do you want my shit-covered clothes as well?
I didn't really expect such a wonderful soundtrack, but The Outer Worlds has outstanding music. Really excellent. It's quite muted and understated at times, only to crescendo at just the right point. And it had that next generation twang that had my inner Star Trek nerd smiling. Sound effects and speech are top notch, and the voice actors deliver their lines well. They're believable and come across with unique personalities and form a quirky crew and cast with good humour in the writing. Visual score, 7 out of 20. There are too many elements that need attention right now despite a semi-stable frame rate and some nice interiors. Like even my speaking just stuttered. Audio scores 18 out of 20. It's an excellently designed score and voices are on point. Now the game will set you back a staggering £49.99 or regional equivalent. Now physically I found it for about 20% cheaper here in the UK on base.com, but even at 40 quid it's overpriced, isn't it, for what you're being asked to relinquish in terms of visual quality and performance. £30, I would have said fair enough. I can see what they've done there, but 50 quid, the same as The Witcher, which is 200 hours long, and a very, very well handled Switch port, or Skyrim even, which, let's be honest, you could play for infinity, which again, while not perfect, has much more content and I would argue possibly looks better. No, for me, it's too expensive. This type of pricing needs to change. The game is literally included, and I use this in air quotes, free right now if you have the Xbox Game Pass subscription. It's 50% off on PlayStation, so you can get it for 25 quid over there. And if you own that platform, why are you even here? Go and get it over there. Switch owners, wait for a sale. Yes, there's a good chunk of game here. Yes, it's very enjoyable. But comparatively speaking, particularly to those two other titles which you can get for less, yeah, not convinced. Value for me scores 10 out of 20. So there we have it. What a strange port. Some great additions and some not so great. A game I absolutely love playing on Switch, but also one I would recommend most people steer clear of if you have a choice and get it on another console. And despite all these juxtapositional statements, it's a good game. It's a fun on the Nintendo Switch and I do enjoy it. Let's hope they patch it up a serious amount and I can revisit with glowing praise. It scores an overall Switch Up score of 68%. Let me know down in the comments, do you think I was too harsh? Do you think I was too lenient? Do you like the game? Because I've got to be honest, I'm absolutely loving playing the game. There are just some annoying issues that shouldn't be here. And hopefully the different scored sections of our review make it very clear which areas are good and which are shocking. A big thanks to our patrons who support us each and every month, and to all of you who leave comments. We really do read every single one and we do appreciate it. Look out for the sales video that's coming if it's not already out. We're giving away 3 more copies of Children of Morta on that one. As always, for all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers guys, see ya!